Of Mystic Musings. I am Marilise de Villiers. I'm your co-host with Sean Caudry, and I've just had this thought, Sean, about how incredible it is that a week it's like a minute. It feels like a minute. But it's so good to be back, and it's always really good to have my regular chats with Sean on a Tuesday as well. And if you've been following us and you've been watching, you know that this is completely intuitive and very spontaneous. And so obviously we have a really broad idea of what we would love to share, but it really is very much us sharing from the heart in the moment, and that's really what we wanted this podcast to be. So I'm going to hand straight over to Sean just to remind us what we've covered so far. Just a quick recap. This is our third episode. Which one?
Fourth, I think we're on four. Yeah, I think four.
Like I'm losing count.
Yeah. We're on a 1 month anniversary. Yay. So good, Marilise. Great to be back with you. And there's a lot happening in the world. So let's jump straight into it. I think just to recap, last week we spoke around self-selection, and we can see the relevance of self-selection if we just look at what's going on in the world today. Escalations of war over the last few days. Everyone's getting super tense. We're obviously seeing some interesting happenings in terms of the US elections and what's transpiring there. We're seeing what's going on in the UK and the protests. And then, of course, we look at a day like, let's say, Sunday evening going into yesterday in the markets, and an absolute sort of crash that transpired there, and billions of dollars wiped out of funds, etc. So the world is just in this place of real crisis, of real fear. And the idea of self-selection, you can just see how quickly that's going to trigger that fear response, and we go back into that primal brain and like, let me hold on, let me whatever it is, right? I've got to protect myself. I've got to keep safe in myself, and that disempowering kind of like, well, let me keep my job. Let me just stay in this. Let me just hold on. So even just staying in situations potentially that one doesn't want to stay in because of the fear. And you and I were just having a bit of a chat, and really this concept of power and how empowered are we actually. You and I sit on these conversations every week, and we're talking around, we're these powerful beings that can create and co-create and manifest, and in that co-creation and manifestation journey obviously sits that empowerment, that idea that like I can self-select, I can choose for myself what it is that I want. But it really puts it to the test. You have a day like yesterday. I'm a person who invests, and so I'm watching in shock, and I'm watching myself just how quickly I can drop into, oh my God, like look what's been wiped out, and etc. Now what? And just how quickly that fear cycle can be triggered. I'm sure the guys in the UK are in that space. Anyway, so I share that with you because that loops off the self-selection, where last week we're talking around, so excited, you can self-select. Choose yourself. What is it that you're wanting? What is it that you're wanting to take ownership of creating? What is it that you're wanting to step into and reshape your reality? And what does that look like? Well, it's all really well and good until you get smacked with like watching billions of dollars, for example, yesterday in your portfolio going down 40%, and suddenly you're feeling very disempowered. But there's never a better time to actually extend and expand into your power. So I think that's a great topic to say, well, how do we deepen into this concept of self-selection? What happens in these moments where we're really stretched and tested? I know you've got a person's situation that's been going on that's really stretching you and kind of testing you. Can you really create something different out of this context? So I think it's a great segue of self-selection, and what does that mean in the context of power? And let's have a conversation today around, well, what do we actually mean about power? And how do we really tap into it? And what does it mean when we are faced with these challenges? What is the ask of us? And I think that's a great segue into building on the concept and the model of self-selection.
Yes. And I think it's helpful just to sort of make the distinction between power like in the context of the material world, and then power in the context of
Yes.
the spiritual world. Because I think, you know, it's a lot of people live in this kind of power zone, which is just the material world, and then obviously there are the mystics that
Yes.
are expanding into the spiritual. So it's really, I think it's helpful not to think about it as two separate things. It's kind of part of one thing. You've got the inner world and you've got the outer world. You've got the world that is kind of visible with your senses, the material world, but then you've got this whole spiritual world to tap into. And I think that's what we are really exploring as modern day mystics, and the curriculum that we're both navigating. So that's kind of the distinction, and that's how I think about it. It'd be really good to sort of get your frame as well, Sean, in terms of how you think about it.
You're spot on. For me, power is I talk about quantum power, and ultimately how that translates into the expression through your physical human form. And so what do I mean by that? Quantum power, let's talk about it. Quantum power, I'm talking about the field. I'm talking about the invisible life force. I'm talking about the quantum mechanics of the world, the quantum science, source, God, the divine. And then what exactly is that, and how do we tap into it? And so we know that quantum is energy. It's a force field. And if we just take for a second, and I want to try and make this very practical for you, and the best way that I can make it practical is to use Greg Braden's he shared it's not his work, but in a teaching he was sharing, he translated how powerful we as human beings are. And I think this is the best way to articulate the level of power we have. So as an adult, we have roughly 50 trillion cells that our bodies are made up of. And these cells each little cell carries an electrical charge of 0.07 volts. Now, you might think 0.07 volts, like what is, that's like minuscule. But let's do the maths on that. Let's calculate the 0.07 times 50 trillion cells. And what you're getting is roughly 3.5 trillion volts of power that your body holds in your system. Power is electricity. And so when we talk about energy and frequency, we're talking about literally, if we can light up a city. Like the amount of power that we carry, the amount of electricity that our neural system has the capacity to carry is that 3.5 trillion volts. That's freaking huge. And so, that starts to say that's the potential that we've got. And that's just in one human, right? So that's a way to kind of start quantifying. Now, obviously, chances are one of us isn't going to light up a city, but it starts to say that's the potential that we have. And so what do I mean by quantum power, and how do we access that? The way that you access this power, the only way to keep extending and expanding into the expression of your power and the internal, and again, Marilise makes a very important distinction. We get power that's controlling, and that is an egotistical driven power that says, I want to control you, I want to manipulate you, I want to hoard, I want to be more than, etc. And so there's the power struggle, but that's a human construct based on fear. But the quantum power is tapping into that source where you are now starting to elevate yourself as an equal partner in terms of actually honing and harnessing the focus of your awareness and your attention. So if you think around your awareness as your consciousness, and then harnessing the emotional power that sits within there. So the power of your thoughts. So harnessing this concept of taking this 3.5 trillion volts of electricity, which sits in like the power of your thoughts. Your heart is 5,000 times more powerful, or the emotions from your heart are 5,000 times more powerful than your thoughts. Well, now that says if I can elevate my emotional state, which is expressed through my heart, into higher and higher levels of joy, of bliss, of happiness, of aliveness, of trust, of courage, well, that's a far more higher amplification of now starting to utilize that energy of your heart, and you drop your thoughts into the energy of your heart. And now you're starting to harness the power, but that takes focus, it takes awareness, it takes pulling in the focus and presencing of your being to focus that energy onto something that you're wanting to create that you can't see in the immaterial world into fruition. I talk a lot about this, and I've got a model that I use in the courses and programs I run to show exactly how this kind of force field and how do you draw in fractals and all of that kind of stuff. But that hopefully gives it a little bit of practicality. So happy to hear, you were talking around intention, and maybe you want to deepen into that concept around focusing of attention and awareness.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit, because I was actually listening to Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he wrote a book. There's a spiritual solution for every problem, and he talks about this inner world, outer world, and really thinking about it as one world, in terms of two unique aspects of a human being. But he also talks in there about the example a friend uses, that the inner world is like electricity, and the outer world, the material world, is like the light bulb. So just to kind of give you extend sort of Sean's analogy there around the voltage and the amount of electricity that you carry, potential that you carry inside. So think about your inner world, your spiritual world, your connection as the electricity, and then obviously the outer world is the kind of the light bulb that gets switched on and off. I thought that was such a helpful kind of visual picture for me. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I guess when you were sort of explaining, the thing that's really present for me at the moment, and I think that is the thing which I would love to explore and help our listeners and our viewers understand better, is this whole, you rightly said, when things are great and life is going really well, it's easy to be happy and alive and full of vibrancy. But then when you navigate a tough challenge, so my husband and I have been navigating a health scare. He's had a cancer scare, and the results came back very clear. So we were very, very happy about that and very grateful about that. But I can honestly say that the last 2 weeks and the waiting and the not knowing what the prognosis are going to be, and sort of being kind of faced with that reality of, I call it mortality motivation, really puts life into perspective, So I think when you do this work, you and I, we do this work every day, and it's that sort of, we tap deep into our heart's desires. As you said, the heart is so much more powerful in terms of manifestation. It's one thing to have that deep desire, but then it's equally important, I think, to have the expectation. And the expectation is often the area, I think, where we're like, where we allow our thoughts to get in the way, So kind of, we truly expecting it? Are we truly expecting, So when we got the first, news of Heine's, so he had a melanoma removed, and it came back as potentially cancerous. So he had to get another operation. Yeah, it was quite insane. And then I sent my son a message saying, I believe Dad's going to be okay. And he said, Mum, we don't believe, we know. And I'm like, that is expectation. That to me was that sort of frequency of expectation. And so I really want to explore that with you, because that to me is the area where I feel I have the most work still to do. Because yes, I tap into, I do this dream building work, and I want this and I want that, and I would love this kind of life. And then the how to make it happen is the kind of the expectation, is that frequency of living into it and being it now, today. And that's, I think, where I think people really, really struggle.
Yeah, so great. And I mean, this is such a layered topic. So, we can pick up on these conversations going forward, but you bring in such a good point. So let's just say we're always in these places, you're talking about your husband and the healthcare. I'm in a situation where I'm literally rebuilding every single part of my life, from income to, I'm building my business. It's one in progress, because I'm living in the United States. I moved here recently, friendships. So every single aspect of my life is in a rebuild phase. Let's just delve into that a little bit, one conversation at a time, and let's use money as the example here, right? And what you say is absolutely right. So I'm going to make this practical, and describe. I mentioned like where we really start to. I want to say that the challenge that we face currently, and think about it for all the viewers. What is a challenge that you're currently facing? Because it's in that current challenge that you're going to harness the new level of power, the resource of power that's available to you. And there's going to be a couple of things that need to happen in that space. So if I'm rebuilding my income, let's say when I left my previous employment before leaving the shores of South Africa, I was earning at a certain level. I'm gonna just round it off to like $10,000 a month as an example, right? So within the structure of that channel, so the channel that the money was coming through was was my employer, right? So every month I'm receiving that amount. The expression of the value exchange of what I was doing in my role and that kind of stuff, obviously then I'm giving within that certain structure. The structure was known. It was in my career. It was something that I had created. I can tell that story another time. But I created it from nothing, and now the structure was existed within which I could create. I would focus on what I wanted for bonuses, if I wanted increases, all of that I would create. Now that structure got removed and collapsed the moment I stepped on the plane and came to the United States, and making the choice that I didn't want to go back into the corporate, but I wanted to scale what I could offer to the world. And a lot of it is around manifestation. And I call what you're describing there the post-manifestation gap, right? Because we have these desires. You want your husband to be healthy. I'm looking to recreate the $10,000 as an example from nothing, right? I've started a new business. I haven't gone back into the formal structure of the employer where where I'm working for a corporate, and that channel through which the money was coming previously doesn't exist. I'm saying to the universe, I need to now recreate different channels for that money to come. So what I do is say there's a set point, and what I'm used to is, let's say $10,000 as the example. That's the set point as a minimum, let's say a monthly minimum that exists. I've created that fractal exists for me. So I'm recreating back to that. And I'm saying to the universe, bring me $10,000 in new channels as the example. This is very basic, just from a time perspective. And then I've got a minimum. So you've always got we work in ranges. So that's a set point that exists. I'm saying, let me get back up to that. And then like a minimum is, let's say, for example, $2,000. Now I go to my minimum to say, well, in my worst time of earning, I was earning $2,000, not at the employer, but let's say just through my life. So I know that I've got the set point. So now I'll put that into the field, want to earn $10,000. And then I'll watch for myself the post, exactly to your point. What's the post manifestation gap that I'm experiencing? What are the things that have come up for me in this new experience? My network is South African. The Rand dollar exchange. So I'm wanting now to charge dollars. The Rand dollar exchange is 20-1 for those of you who are not familiar with South Africa. So my limitations that now I start to see, I've put this manifestation of $10,000 into the field. That's what I want to earn. And now the post-manifestation gap is to watch what are all the limiting beliefs that I've got about that. My network is South African. I don't have a network here. How am I going to get, I'm going into the how. I'm saying, how am I going to get that $10,000? I've got to start from scratch. I'm starting a business from scratch. It's hard to hear the limitation. Starting a business from scratch is hard. It's difficult. And so when I look under those limitations, and I'm just using those as an example, I've got to go under the layer underneath that and say, well, what's really going on in that? Number one, I don't believe in myself. Number two, I don't trust that I can recreate the $10,000 from nothing. And number three, that all ties into shit. I don't really have the conviction in my heart and faith that I'm going to be supported. So if you look at the practical limitations that come up in the post-manifestation gap, and then just go underneath, you can always track it back to those three elements: belief, trust, and conviction. And I go quite deeply into those in my course. So then I know that the dials that I've got to maneuver, first of all, the how is not my responsibility. True manifestation, the how is not my responsibility. The desire is my responsibility. But my work then becomes in expanding. Now, who do I need to expand into? And so when I talk around the new sense of power, now it's about saying, okay, the $10,000, let's say, for example, doesn't exist. And so I've got to now, if you have to think about my identity, I've got to become the identity to match that $10,000, because the $10,000 exists in the field. Someone else has done it. Plenty of mentors, coaches, whatever, plenty of business people who have started businesses. I'm watching them all around me. I'm in contact with them. So I know $10,000 a month exists. The fractal exists. My situation is in a particular situation, and my beliefs and limit and all of that kind of stuff is at a certain level of power. Given my new situation, I've got to become, and every single day, without seeing the actual practical manifestation, which is the universe's responsibility. We don't trust the fucking universe. The universe is going to bring it to us, and we try do. And I'm not saying that you don't take inspired action. You absolutely need to take inspired action that's aligned, but you'll be guided. So every day I'm actually having to work internally to expand and become this bigger version. I'm having to dissolve current beliefs and recreate new beliefs. That's my work that I am expanding into, so that I'm expanding into this energetic frequency match in thoughts, in emotions and behaviors, that at the same time is this magnet, so the universe can bring the $10,000. Try to describe that without my pictures and whatever, but that's what I got for you.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. I just want to sort of re-presence what you said about the how is not my responsibility. You know, I think that's and I actually did a post on LinkedIn yesterday about the 80-20 trap. So it's like most people spend 80% doing and 20%,
yes,
you know, kind of manifesting. And I think that's the whole trap, is it should be the 80% the inner work and the 20% the strategies and the tactics, so that the actual, I think so I think Tony Robbins talks about this. He says 80% psychology, 20% tactics. So, I mean, there's various different versions of this out in the world, but it's that sort of 80-20 trap that I think most of humanity fall into. So it's really, and it's that sort of, like, as you say, you know, the universe makes it happen. You know, the how is not my responsibility, and you become that magnet. But in order to become that magnet, you've got to have that frequency, and it's the aligned, as you say, it's the aligned thoughts, emotions, and actions that we take, you know, but really having the belief and the trust and the conviction. So I love how you frame that for people. And, you know, I know that you have a beautiful course where you take people deeper into this as well. So awesome. Really awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure where you want to take us next.
Yeah. I think the idea is like a practical, you know, so people will say, but my current reality is X, Y, and Z. Well, I can assure you, I'm sitting in a current reality where I've collapsed every single timeline deliberately to recreate a life. Now, I'm not suggesting people go do that, because you're not necessarily going to leave the country and that kind of stuff. But there are many people who are needing to make the change. And similar to you, I wrote a post yesterday around, like, is your soul sick? And what I was alluding to is how often we compromise. Really we even compromise on our manifestations. Because I'll say to my clients, like, write your 10 out of 10 manifestation, your desire, right? 10 out of 10, right? And then I watch myself as I settle for less. So I encourage our viewers, go and write your 10 out of 10 desire in terms of what you want for money. And that's like, but I'm in debt and this and that and etc. Well, write your 10 out of 10 desire. What's your 10 out of 10? You want no debt. You want to be doing $10,000 a month consistently. You want your own business. You want clients coming to you. you want to wake up in the morning at your own time on your biorhythms, and go write that, and then put that into the field and just like mull on it, and watch how quickly you will compromise on the 10 out of 10. Because always in manifestation, what will happen is, like, the universe will bring you something similar or just less than, or it brings you the first version. If you're in business or in corporate world, you do version 1, draft 2, and you get feedback and etc. You've got to think about this as with the universe as well when you're expanding into it, is that your version 1 in terms of who you are when you're putting your desire out there, and the version 1 that comes back, the version 1 from the universe brings you back, because that's the version that you currently are. And people will go, oh, okay, I'll take this. But it's not your 10 out of 10, but you settle for it and you compromise, right? No, like, if you really are diligent and you really believed in self, and therefore by virtue of that, it's all one, you believed in the universe and the power of the universe and the power of yourself, you would then say, hey, thanks for the feedback, like you would in a designing a presentation or a report or whatever else. So thanks for the feedback, but let's adjust it, and you do your little markups and your little adjustments on the document, and then you got to send it back out to the universe. I like this, but it wasn't quite right. Like, bring me the next version. Yeah. And at the same time, you're saying, but I'll play my part. Show me what my part is. What's the inspired, being the operative word here? What's the inspired action I need to take? What's the inspired inspiration that's coming forward? And then, typically the universe brings you back version 2. Yeah, it's better and closer. But we don't have the patience. We want it now, so we accept, and we actually haven't extended into the full version. So this is just something to play with, just to start playing with a very simple thing in terms of, and understandably, understand people's realities. But at that 10 out of 10 version, it's not just putting the 10 out of 10 version out there to the universe. Who do you have to be now to receive your 10 out of 10? Because you ain't going to get your 10 out of 10 until you be now in thoughts and emotions and actions. Show up with it without the evidence of it. Because the value is actually in the journey of becoming that version of yourself. So that by the time the 10 out of 10 comes, you're just like, you're already so happy because you've changed so much that you don't even need the 10 out of 10, because you've just become this incredible version of yourself. So it's now become the version across your emotions, your thoughts and actions before you receive. And that's the constant work that needs to happen.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, be her now, be him now. So I'm fortunate to work with the amazing Maya Kumarota, and she's my coach, she's my colleague, and her whole philosophy around life is to be her now, to be him now, to live into what you were born to be, born to do, born to have, born to give. And, I thought, I just mentioned that because the whole be her now, be him now, that constant reminder of, that 10 out of 10. I love how you have explained it, because it's a very practical way of thinking about it. And it's kind of recognizing that you don't expand into that version. Well, the idea is that you expand into that version overnight, but it is really the life curriculum. And, things that sometimes take us 20 years could take a year, could take 2 months, could take 2 days. It's really people. I have seen some amazing people, some amazing manifestors out there, like Reagan Hidea is one of the women that comes to mind. And she talks about, I'm such a fan, and she talks about, how she had this plan to manifest her ideal husband. It was a 2-year plan, and she manifested him within 2 months. I may be getting the facts wrong, but and it's such a beautiful when you start really leaning into it, and that belief and that trust and that conviction, and you be her now, you be him now, and you match that frequency, not just of the desire, but also the expectation. I think it becomes something that you can, you could really play with the universe in such a beautiful way.
Yeah.
I'm
100%.
I think the best example.
It's a skill.
Yeah. I think the best example I have in my life is probably building our dream home here in South Africa, so it happened. I'm sometimes like, well, every day I wake up in the mornings and I'm like, I have to pinch myself because I can't quite comprehend how it sort of happens so quickly. So so it does work, but I think it's me navigating now very much what you are navigating in terms of the reverse, returning to South Africa, having my network in the UK, to recreate that level of income. So it's like you being such a beautiful mirror today. So I'm very grateful for that, and I think the awareness just of that gap, that post-manifestation gap that we have, and being aware of it. I think it starts with that awareness and really checking in on yourself. And that's kind of the whole ROAR framework, is the recognition of, recognize, observe it, stay with it, feel it, assert it, and redirect it. So it's kind of like why I've created ROAR, because it's like, every moment of every day, it's catching those thoughts, it's standing guard at the door of your mind, and really working into the manifestations.
Yeah, so beautiful. I know we're out of time, Marilis, but I'll share. I think I'll share next week my creation, or Dana and I, right? So we married. She's my wife. You're familiar with Dana, but that was also about a 2 or 3 month creation. She lived in the States. I lived in South Africa. So I'll go through the practicalities of that particular creation process, so people can kind of hear what is it that I did, what was going on for me, and the journey, and then how all the pieces come together. And then I just want to tie it back to, I started out by saying, look at the world that we live in and exist, and it's terrifying for many people. The liberation out of being terrified is cultivating this skill. And that's why I teach it, and that's why I love it, and that's why I've gone full-time into it now. Because this is a skill, not just for the future, but for the now. Because if you want to liberate yourself and empower yourself into truly knowing and discovering not just how powerful you are, but to exist in a world where you can have chaos that's surrounding you and still exist in this world where you are able to create things. Because you got to remember, war or financial crisis or recessions are all man-made constructs. These do not exist in the mind of the universe. In the mind of the universe is here to serve our greatest joy and pleasure. That is for us to decide and to create, irrespective of what the human constructs are that try and keep us small and separate. And so bear that in mind, why we are so passionate about, like, this is a skill. Learn the skill. If you want to operate outside the system of being controlled and programmed, and this is what's possible and limited, start to access the truth of who you are so that you can exist irrespective of the chaos and still live a fruitful life. So contact either Marilis or myself. You can follow us either of us on LinkedIn, on Facebook. We've both got stuff going. There's a lot of great information. You want to have a conversation with each of us, reach out, just drop us a DM, whatever, through whichever channel you want, just to have a further conversation. Just to have a conversation. There's some amazing work that we're doing, and watch out for whether that's masterclasses or more conversations like this. We've both got a lot on the go and a lot to offer. So would love to have conversations with you.
Brilliant. Yeah, please do get in touch, because I think this is really, we are so passionate about, and excuse me, and I guess, Sean, we teach what we live every day, and I think that's the beauty of this work. It's one day we might be showing up all sparkly eyed, yesterday we may be on our knees, navigating overwhelm. So,
my God, the weekend was a shit show on my absolutely, and I'm sharing with the clients I'm working right now, absolutely. And I'll say the weekend was a shit show for me, and I mean it. Like, I was deep into, my soul was sick, and then it's like, well, what's going on, and you got to just kind of work into it. But the reality is, I think many people have these ideas and concepts, and I'm irrespective of where I am in my life. Like, I'm getting out and teaching this. I'm having to rebuild and recreate. So I'm not waiting for it to be perfect. And I'm now at the whatever it is that I've got my aspirations to recreate. I'm sharing with my clients, hey, this is where it's at. Yeah, this is what I'm building. And I don't try and hide, because we are powerful 367 or 365 days of the year, 24/7. Christmas, whatever, it doesn't matter what's going on. Shit show on Saturday and Sunday in my emotional world. We're always powerful. You just got to keep showing up for the work. Yes. And that's the way you teach people.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I had that question this morning: for how long do I still have to show up? You know, and I came to the conclusion, as long as it takes. You know, this is the passion, this is the life's work, and you know, it's I'm in this for the long run. So I think that's the message that I want to share. Anybody out there that feels a little bit, you know, like despair, feels frustration, yeah, just, you know, keep showing up. Please just keep showing up. Take that one step with what you know, with what you have today, right here, right now. So I'm going to wrap us up. Thank you for joining. If you're watching the replay, you know, please send us some feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If there's anything you would love us to talk about, to go deeper into, let us know. And also, if you want to be notified every week, then subscribe to the channel, because then you'll get a message to know that we're going live. So thanks for joining, and have an amazing rest of your weeks.
Beautiful. Lots of love, everyone.